At just 16, Brielle never expected that one reply at lunch would change everything. When a cruel joke about her skin tone rang out across the cafeteria, she didn't just shut her bully down. She lit a spark that would shake the whole school. Lunchtime at Roosevelt High in Cincinnati was always noisy and crowded, with groups spread across the room, athletes in one corner, theater kids in another, and everyone else gathering where they felt they belonged. Brielle sat by the window, where sunlight touched her braids and the corner felt calmer, a little escape from the chaos without disappearing completely. Being one of the few black students in a mostly white school, Brielle had learned early that standing out could feel dangerous. Her confidence was mistaken for pride, her laughter for being too loud, her very presence for being a problem. Still, she smiled as she opened her warm homemade jambalaya, letting her brown eyes drift across the busy room. Snippets of chatter floated past. Stories about football games, weekend parties, the usual high school noise. Brielle took a bite and glanced outside at the courtyard, the trees moving gently in the fall breeze. She had gotten good at blending into the background, keeping quiet so no one would pick on her. But peace never lasted long. The trouble started like a storm on the horizon. Jason Miller and his friends sat a few tables away, their laughter sharp and cutting. Brielle didn't need to look up to know it was about her. She'd felt that kind of attention before. Too dark, right? Jason's voice carried across the room, loud enough for everyone to hear. You'd think she'd get it by now. Brielle froze, fork in midair, the word stinging. She quickly set it down, turning just enough to see Jason's smug grin and Mia's forced giggle. A few kids looked uneasy, but most ignored it. The air shifted as eyes turned her way. Her heart pounded, but her face stayed calm. She had learned to swallow moments like this. Only this time, something was different. The insult cut deeper, meant to provoke her. Jason leaned back, smirking. What? No comeback? Nothing to say? The cafeteria quieted, forks paused, and a heavy silence spread as everyone waited. Brielle's grip tightened. She could ignore it like always. Or she could finally stand up. Jason leaned forward, mocking. What's wrong, Brielle? Cat got your tongue. Even Mia muttered. Jason stopped, but he brushed it off with a shrug. What? I'm just being honest. Brielle drew in a steady breath and placed her fork down, slowly but with purpose. Brielle pushed her lunch aside and rose from her seat, the scrape of her chair against the tile echoing through the cafeteria. Her movements were calm, her face unreadable, but every eye was on her now. She didn't look at the crowd, only at Jason. Honest, she repeated, her voice even but sharp enough to cut through the room. Jason let out a laugh, though it sounded forced. Yeah, somebody had to say it. Whispers spread across the cafeteria, some shocked, some nervous. Brielle stepped toward his table, her stance strong and steady. It felt like the whole room had shrunk. Everyone's attention pulled into this one moment. You think you're brave? She asked, her words steady, carrying a quiet strength that silenced the murmurs. Sitting there with your little crew, trying to drag people down, because deep inside you feel small? Jason's grin faltered. What are you even talking about? Oh, I'm sorry, Brielle said coolly, her tone calm but her words sharp. Did I use too many big words for you? Let me spell it out. You're insecure, and instead of fixing what's broken inside you, you try to break people like me. But here's the truth, you're not special. The cafeteria fell completely silent. Even the lunch monitors, usually detached from student drama, were frozen in place. Jason shifted uncomfortably, his cocky front slipping under the weight of her words. But you think it's funny, don't you? Brielle continued, her voice rising just enough to command the room. Making jokes about my skin, like I don't already know what people like you think. Like I haven't heard it 100 times before. Jason opened his mouth, but no words came out. He glanced toward his friends, but they avoided his eyes. No one rushed to back him up. Brielle took another step closer, her presence electric, every movement drawing the room tighter. Her head tilted slightly, a faint smile tugging at her lips, not of amusement, but of confidence. You know what's really funny, Jason? She said, her voice sharper now. That you think your words have power over me. But here's something you'll never understand, she paused, letting the silence thicken before continuing. This skin, She gestured toward herself. Is beautiful. It carries history, strength, and resilience. You don't get to define it, and you will never make me ashamed of it. Jason's face turned red, his bravado crumbling. The cafeteria grew still, the kind of silence where even the smallest sound would echo. Brielle's voice carried beyond him now, reaching everyone in the room. You make fun of me because I'm different. But what I see someone afraid of what they don't understand. Someone so desperate for attention, they'll tear others down just to feel bigger. That's not strength, Jason. That's weakness. A murmur swept through the cafeteria. A few students nodded, their looks shifting from indifference to admiration. Jason's eyes darted nervously, realizing the tide had turned against him. And tell me this, Brielle pressed, stepping closer still. What do you actually gain by humiliating me? Does it make you feel stronger? Does it fix what's missing in your life? Jason stammered. I didn't mean it like that. Didn't mean it? Brielle shot back, her voice firm. You knew exactly what you were doing. You wanted me to feel small. But guess what? It didn't work. It never will. The room was spellbound, every student hanging on her words. Even those who usually kept quiet during drama couldn't look away. Brielle's confidence was magnetic, her voice slicing through the silence like a beam of light. But here's the thing, Jason, she said, her tone softening but her edge still firm. You don't get to write my story. I do. And in my story, I'm not the victim. I'm the hero. I speak up, I stand tall, and I show people like you just how little your words really matter. For a moment, no one moved. Time seemed suspended, Brielle's words hanging heavy in the air. The sound of clapping broke the silence. Soft at first, then louder, spreading quickly from table to table until the room filled with applause. Brielle didn't grin or gloat. She simply stood tall, calm and steady, her eyes fixed forward. Jason shrank in his seat, his earlier swagger gone, his face flushed red as he stared at the floor. Even Mia, who had laughed with him moments earlier, shifted uncomfortably and avoided looking at anyone, especially Brielle. But this moment wasn't just about Brielle. She wasn't standing up only for herself. She was speaking for everyone who had ever been made to feel small, for anyone who had ever felt like they didn't belong. The applause wasn't from the whole cafeteria, but it was enough. It carried meaning. And while Brielle didn't need approval, hearing the claps and catching a few nods of support reminded her she wasn't entirely alone. Jason slumped further down, wishing he could disappear. His friends looked uneasy, and Mia quickly grabbed her tray, muttering something about getting to class early. One by one, his table emptied until he sat by himself, humiliated. As Brielle walked past, someone called out, "You're amazing, Brielle." The voice came from a table she'd never noticed before, a quiet group that usually stayed out of the spotlight. A small, grateful smile crossed her lips. Still, she didn't linger in the moment. Slowly, conversations picked back up, though at a lower volume than before. Students ate and chatted again, but the air had shifted. Something invisible hung in the room, a quiet reminder that silence wasn't always the right response. Jason, however, couldn't let it go. He muttered under his breath as Brielle passed, just loud enough for her to hear. "Drama queen." She stopped, turning back. Her face wasn't angry anymore. It carried pity. "If standing up for myself makes me a drama queen," she said evenly, "then I'll wear the crown. You should try it sometime. It's better than hiding behind insults." Jason had no reply. His friends avoided eye contact, clearly embarrassed, leaving him alone in his seat. Brielle returned to her table and picked up her fork, resuming her meal like nothing had happened. Her hands trembled slightly, the adrenaline catching up, but she kept her composure. A few students quietly stopped by to thank her, one whispering, "You said what all of us were too scared to say." Brielle nodded softly. "Thank you." She appreciated her words, but her thoughts were elsewhere. Would Jason think twice next time, or would he just find another target? The question made her chest tighten, but she pushed it aside. For now, she had done what she could. The real weight of her words, she knew, would show later, when whispers turned into conversations that had never been spoken before. By the next day, Brielle's stand was all anyone at Roosevelt High could talk about. The cafeteria moment spread fast, retold in hallways and classrooms, each version a little more dramatic than the last. "Did you hear what Brielle said to Jason?" one student whispered. She completely shut him down. I didn't know she had that in her. Some praised her bravery, while others dismissed it as too much drama. But Brielle didn't feed the gossip. She walked the halls with her head high, greeting familiar faces, ignoring the stares. She wouldn't give anyone the satisfaction of seeing her rattled. In class, though, she began to notice something new. People weren't just talking about her. They were talking about the issue itself. In English, a boy raised his hand and asked, "Why do people feel the need to tear others down? Is it jealousy or something deeper?" The teacher, caught off guard but curious, steered the discussion into prejudice, insecurity, and the reasons behind cruelty. Some students fidgeted, uncomfortable, while others spoke openly, their voices full of conviction. At lunch later that day, Brielle spotted Jason. He was sitting at his usual table, but this time he was completely alone. His friends had scattered, keeping their distance from the mess he had created. Brielle felt a flicker of pity for Jason, but it didn't last. This was a result of his own choices, a chance for him to reflect on how much damage words could cause. Whether he learned from it or not was his decision. The real surprise came later that week. Brielle was at her locker when Mia walked up, the last person she expected to see. Mia looked uneasy, her fingers nervously twisting her backpack strap. "Hey, Brielle," she said softly. Brielle raised a brow, but kept her voice even. "What's up?" Mia hesitated, then blurted out, I want to say I'm sorry. For laughing. For not saying anything. I don't know what I was thinking, but it wasn't right." For a moment, Brielle was speechless. Apologies weren't something she was used to in situations like this. She studied Mia's face, searching for sarcasm or insincerity, but all she saw was guilt. "Thank you," Brielle finally said. "It means something that you came to me and admitted that." Mia looked relieved. "I've been thinking about what you said. You're right. I didn't speak up because I was scared. But that's not an excuse." "It's not," Brielle agreed with a faint smile, but realizing it as a start. Mia nodded, then walked away, leaving Brielle with a swirl of emotions. She hadn't expected to change anyone's mind, especially not Jason's closest friend. Yet here they were, one small step forward. But even beyond that apology, something bigger was taking root. By the end of the week, the cafeteria incident wasn't just another piece of school drama. It had grown into something larger. Teachers started weaving discussions about respect and inclusivity into their lessons. The principal even made an announcement, reminding everyone that Roosevelt High was a community built on kindness and understanding. Life didn't suddenly become perfect for Brielle. There were still stares, whispers, and awkward encounters. But something had shifted. She walked the halls with a little more ease, no longer feeling like an outsider, but like someone whose voice had been heard. Students she hardly knew gave her nods of quiet recognition. Jason, on the other hand, faded into the background. His swagger was gone, replaced by a subdued silence. He avoided Brielle whenever their paths crossed. He never apologized, but the way he carried himself said enough. One afternoon, Brielle sat at her usual spot in the cafeteria, staring out the window where autumn leaves swayed in the breeze. Her best friend, Taylor, slid into the seat across from her. "You good?" Taylor asked with a knowing grin. Brielle nodded. "Yeah, I think I am." Taylor smirked. "Good. Because you were a superhero this week." Brielle laughed softly. "I don't know about that. I was just tired of being quiet." "Sometimes," Taylor said, "that's all it takes. One person willing to speak up." Brielle's smile deepened, warmth spreading through her chest. She thought about Mia's apology, the unexpected words of support, and the conversations that had sprung up across classrooms and hallways. Maybe she hadn't changed the whole world, but she had started something, and for now that was enough. As she stood to leave, her eyes swept over the cafeteria. It was still noisy, still full of cliques, but it felt different, less divided, more aware. Brielle picked up her tray, walking with steady steps toward the exit. Before she left, She glanced at Jason's old table, now filled with other students. He wasn't there. For the first time, she felt peace. She had reclaimed her space. She had reclaimed her voice. Standing up for yourself isn't easy, but it may be the most powerful thing you'll ever do. Brielle's story is a reminder that words matter, and that silence can be just as powerful as the loudest shout. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that inspire, challenge, and remind us of the strength in speaking out.